Hi, and thanks for joining me today on this WEX Online Masterclass. I'm Ben. I'll be taking you through the Masterclass today. We'll be focusing on storytelling and content creation, particularly around a particular project that I've been working on over the past few months. So the project is up on my window here, so I've got a bank of monitors just here that I'm working from. The project that I'm working on is focused around this one person called Glenn. He is a friend of mine. He tunes and restores pianos. The project is particularly around this one piano that he's currently restoring. So it is a project that's taken a long time to kind of put together, based on the time that it's taken him to kind of restore and get to kind of where he needs it to be. So it's still ongoing, and obviously with the pandemic and the lockdowns, this kind of process has taken longer than it would normally take had it been like a regular project, a regular kind of scenario. So it is still ongoing. So there's bits that in here that aren't finished, but I'm going to take you through the ins and outs of how I've got to the pre-production or the planning stage, kind of picking out like the right questions to ask Glenn, how I've kind of formatted that all the way through to the initial shoot days, and then kind of starting to build the edit together. So I'll go through that, and I've got a couple of other little projects that I've been working on as well, and how I kind of pick those up, and just really about staying creative when there is like a lull or there is a something like this that kind of impacts your daily life or your work life, to try and stay above that and stay creative and keep kind of pushing yourself forward as a creative individual. So yeah, we're going to go through all of that, but first of all, just a little introduction about me. So as I said, my name's Ben. I am a shooter-producer. I work for an agency called Somersault in Cambridge. I also do some kind of work on the side, which is one of these pieces. Generally they are just creative pieces, so it affords me the kind of time to do these sorts of pieces with various individuals. So in terms of like commercial value, it's quite low, but in terms of the kind of creativity that I can put into it, it's quite high. It also affords me the opportunity to try different things out in terms of lighting styles, camera movements, different experiments with shutter speeds versus the actual frame rate as well. So I can kind of try all these different things out and different techniques in my kind of own work, which I can then move over into the work that I do for Somersault, for the agency that I work for. Now, in terms of kind of keeping busy with the creative stuff over the pandemic, it has been a little bit difficult, because we've obviously had those now 2 lockdowns. So being able to meet up with people, go into kind of confined spaces, which you'd normally be 2 or 3 people from your crew in a room with at least one other person, the contributor, recording their story. That's just really not possible, and really not kind of a good practice to kind of go down. So with this interview, I did manage to shoot this before the lockdown, the first one. So it was in a relatively large space. There's myself and one of my friends that I kind of do like bits like this with. So he was kind of monitoring camera and sound, and I was producing the piece. So that worked out fine. That was before everything kind of kicked off. So we were able to do that. That was kind of well within bounds of what we were allowed to do at the time. Since then, obviously, we've had the first lockdown, so capturing stuff over that was just pretty much a no-go. But between the first lockdown and second lockdown, I did start working on another project, but that was outdoors. So the interview was outdoors, the kind of supporting footage or B-roll was all outdoors. So again, relatively safe, keeping myself safe. I work with people, both in my crew that I work with, or my friends that I work with, and anyone who I am filming. There's a certain level of trust that you obviously need to have there to make sure that they're not going to expose you to something that you don't want to kind of catch, and vice versa, you don't want to expose people to a virus either. So in that terms, just having that mutual respect for each other, that kind of communication, just make sure, if someone does get ill, you can drop the project like that, wait for a few weeks until it kind of all passes over, fingers crossed and everything, that you can then pick the project up once everyone's back to kind of normal. So it's just keeping mindful of where you are, your kind of own health, and keeping that in mind. Like, nothing is more important than your own health. So the sake of a project, putting it off for a few weeks just means that you can kind of stay safe. So yeah, the project I've been working on, as I said, it's this piano piece. There's a little bit of a fun piece that I've been working on with one of my friends who's just started a new venture for his business. So I'll be kind of focusing on that. That's kind of more of a advert kind of style piece, whereas this is like a little docu piece that I've been working on. So I do try and lend my hand outside of work to various different pieces of content and various different creative routes as they come in. So yeah, that's a bit about me. So we're going to start by going through the initial kind of starting phase of a project. So that's the storyboarding and planning phase, or the pre-production phase of it. Okay, so in terms of the pre-production and storyboarding phase, this is what I consider to be one of the most important phases of the actual project, of any project. So spending a bit more time here means that you don't need to do so many days on a shoot, for example. You're not shooting too much or too little. It means that your edit's going to come together a lot faster. All in all, it's going to be a much smoother process if you just spend a bit more time in the pre-production phase. So part of that is obviously getting the project in the first place. Now, as I said, with something like this, Glenn is a friend of mine, an ex-colleague of mine as well. So picking up something like this was relatively straightforward. It's just kind of drop him an email, see if he's up for producing something like this. But other pieces of content that I have worked on previously is just finding local businesses. Now more than ever, local businesses, small businesses need your kind of support. So whether you can do projects like this to kind of either keep your creativity going when if you're not getting the paid work in, or if you want to kind of increase your portfolio of work that you've got, just contacting local businesses and doing stuff at cost or free, or very little expenditure to them. At the end of the day, you're contacting them for the work as well. So pick local businesses that are interesting. So I did a piece, for example, like this one, which was for a local aquascaping shop or store in Norwich called Scape Nature. So I worked on this project. This was last year, and this was a good fun project to kind of experiment with, try some different shots with, and kind of gave them a piece to kind of walk away with that they could kind of promote their store. So there are loads of stores out there. I'm not sure on who to contact. If you are looking for specific industries or specific types of stuff, like woodworking is always a really good one. It's the texture and things like that you can capture in a piece are always really quite interesting. So you can pop up little adverts on, or like requests on like Facebook, local groups, for example. So whether it's a town or village or city, you can just pop a little post up there, and that's a really good way to get pieces of work in that they're not necessarily going to pay you at all, but it's a really good way to kind of up your creativity, and as I said, bring in that little bit of work just to kind of keep your momentum going. Because at the end of the day, if you start to slow down your momentum for creating stuff, it's a little bit difficult to get out of that kind of lull. So keeping that creativity up, keeping your brain working, using these types of projects to really push yourself creatively as well. Something you wouldn't be able to do with like a piece of client work, for example, as I said a bit earlier. So that's kind of getting in projects. So next we're going to go through the different steps that I take in terms of doing the pre-production and getting that right. So that's the main kind of paperwork. As dull as it may sound, it is really important, and it's not very creative, but it really does help in your actual production and post-production work. So never underestimate the importance of planning your shoot and your production. So first of all, what you want to do is, once you've sat down or found the person or project or whatever you're filming, once you've kind of got that nailed down, it's what it is that you're trying to promote, what it is you're trying to show the viewer, the audience. At the end of the day, you are creating it for an audience, you're not just creating it for yourself. You want other people to see it. So sit down and think about the direction of how you want this video to kind of play out. Do you want it to be a narrative piece about the owner of a business, for example? Do you want it to be like a docu-piece about an individual and their life? A lot of these types of content are coming out at the moment, and a lot of them do have that kind of emotional like roller coaster, and it doesn't have to have an emotional roller coaster. It can be a real nice straight firing piece of content that kind of takes you from the inception of an idea all the way through to the kind of build of it and to the execution of it. So whether that is a small business or someone's life journey, it doesn't always have to be kind of a tale of sorrow. So have a look at the direction of it, what it is you want to get out of it. So with this piece, what I wanted to do is kind of show that that kind of intimate nature of stripping down the piano, the kind of build of it, to show Glenn's work, how he has kind of built his craft, where he kind of came from. So that does have a nice little ride to it, and the interview piece came out really well. I'm really happy with that. So I just wanted to kind of tell that story of his journey, as well as the piano's journey that he's restoring at the moment as well. So that's kind of my direction behind it. Now, after you've looked at the direction, you've got to also think about where it's going to sit, so the outputs for it. So in terms of outputs, you want to look at where it's going to go. So most of my stuff will go onto Vimeo, or it'll go onto my Facebook page, or it'll sit on other social channels. So what you post up to Instagram will differ to what you post up to Facebook, which will differ to what you put on your website or Vimeo. So you want to think about the different outputs and where exactly they're going to sit. So you might want to create a shorter edit, for example, for Instagram to lead to your main video, so a little cut down. So have a think about those and the types of shots you might want, or the style you might want to fit into each of those. If you're just creating it for mobile viewing, for example, you might want to do it in a 9:16 format, so that's portrait instead of landscape. You might want to shoot it that way. There's more and more content being created that way as well. So if it is just mobile, then do consider that. If it is multi, then obviously shoot it in a landscape ratio. So after you've picked out your direction, your outputs, the next kind of phase to do is looking at building the actual story itself. So I always start off by having a conversation with the person who I'm going to be featuring in the film. So in this case, kind of sitting down with Glenn a week or so before. Now in kind of current times, you can just give them a quick call, or a Skype call, or a Zoom call, just to kind of go through the ins and outs of it. Or you're allowed to meet up with another person from a different household outside of your house. So you can go for a walk with them in the countryside. So go out for a walk with them. Take a little recording device, so whether that's an app on your phone, or a little dictaphone, or something like that you can take with you, that you can record the conversation. And then as you go for the walk, just make sure that you're picking up both your voice and their voice. Just go for that walk, have a conversation with them, just find out their journey related to the kind of story that you want to tell. Pick out those kind of key parts. Have a short list of kind of questions in mind about just the ins and outs, how they got there, the kind of experience with their journey to date, and where they're hoping to go in the future, things like that. And that will just really help you pull out, kind of elicit those answers that you want, that you can then feed back into the main interview that you go and sit down with. So once you've got those, you can then take that home, sit down, pop your headphones in, listen to the conversation, and just write down some of the kind of key points that they go over that course of that conversation. So as I said, it's mostly like the journey, like where they started, what their kind of first exposure to, in this case, kind of pianos and restoration was. So in kind of Glenn's point here, his first exposure to that was, like the playing side of it, was that his dad got a keyboard when he was quite young, when Glenn was quite young, and also there was an old piano at his school that he tried to kind of tune up and play when he was at school. So that's kind of the kind of starting point. Then moving through that, it's then picking up where they are now, so that kind of journey. So pulling out all those questions, you want to get a good list of questions that you want to ask them. Not too lengthy, not too many, because really you want to think about what the output's going to be and the story that you want. But out of those answers that you're pulling out of that first kind of chat, you can then have a think about the direction of the story and the flow of it. Once you've got that flow, you can then start putting those questions, like, I'll put this question together, how will this question elicit this answer? So we've already got the answer that we want from them, so we want to kind of pull on that a little bit more. So when I do this planning, I'll have my kind of example answer from them, the answer that they gave during their interview. I'll have that in my middle column like I've got here. I'll have my sample answer, which is kind of a tidied up version of it on the right hand side, and then I'll have the question that should hopefully pull out that answer. So you can kind of just flow through and ask the questions as you go through. So once you've got the questions, it's then thinking about the visuals that are going to support those answers and that journey. Here you can kind of create a shot list or storyboard. I don't always storyboard everything in depth. Some things I storyboard more than others. Mostly it's the kind of visuals that I want to create, maybe the look or the feel of each visual that I want to create. So I've gone with a very purposeful look with this shot here, or pretty much the entire piece with Glenn. It's in this converted barn that we're in. The light was really great in there. We have this like kind of pool of light coming in from the window on the left. It's quite dark over on this side. So it's just about kind of emphasizing the right parts. So lighting the piano, lighting Glenn, lighting this piano here, just to kind of bring in those elements to kind of really help tell the story and show what the story is about. Yeah, so it's just kind of pulling out those like shots that you want to cover. Now you can do this by stock websites are really good. You can just kind of grab the watermark version, just chuck that in like a little list of this is the kind of shot, you want a two shot, for example, or an over the shoulder shot, or you want like a close up of someone's hands that's kind of this sort of angle, just to kind of give you a prompt on the angles that you're going to use or kind of put together. So not necessarily then the look. You can have one image at the top as your master, like look, this kind of look and feel that we want, and then just like a series of images from the stock sites. They're really kind of good. There's such a big imagery source, and most of them are of a decent enough kind of quality. So you can kind of populate that, and then at least if you're working with another videographer, you can kind of hand them, this is the shot list we want, these types of angles. It gives you a kind of really good visual representation, especially as you can't get super close to people nowadays. You can't kind of grab their camera of them. That's not the kind of right thing to do at the moment. So if you are working with another camera operator, you can be like, okay, this is the sort of shots we want. You can kind of send them the shot list beforehand, or if you work on something like an iPad, you can share your document with them, so onto their phone or onto their iPad or tablet. It's a really good way for them to kind of go through and be like, okay, this is the kind of angle that you want for the hand shot, and then kind of shoot that and review it, and you can kind of go through and tick off. So that's like this sort of storyboard that I work with, or I'll look at a shot list, which is something similar. If I'm working for myself, then I won't go and research all those visuals, because that does take a little bit of time. But I will go through and I will write out the types of shots that I want, the scenes that this is going to go into, and that also means that when I get into the edit side of things, I've got a good idea of the types of shots that I'm going to want to put into my piece, and exactly in what order they're going to sit into the film. Now, shot lists don't necessarily have to be done before your first shoot. So, for example, here, this shot or this shoot here, this shoot day, I actually went and shot Glenn and a couple of little bits on this first point. So that was him with his piano that he's restoring in the background. So I actually went and shot the interview first with no kind of supporting footage at all. Then got that back, went through it, cut out all the bits I wanted for the interview, made the actual narrative piece, and then that kind of gave me the ability to go through and actually really refine my storyboard and refine my shot list to get to a point where I was like, okay, when I go in the next time, this is what I need to capture, this is what I need for this section. I'm not going to miss anything then. So just going in and capturing enough footage. And that's kind of what the shot list is really about. It's just making sure that you have enough angles of something to build that story of that little vignette within that scene. It's nothing worse than kind of getting back to the edit and, I don't know, you're 3 or 4 shots short of building your kind of full sequence, and just having to stretch those clips out a little bit longer than you feel they should be. It's not the end of the world, but if you want to have like a certain pace to it, you're going to want the numbers of clips there, and clips that are different from each other as well. There's no point just shooting 10 shots of the same thing if the angle's ever so slightly different, but the movement's the same. So that's the kind of storyboard and shot list and a lot of the paperwork that I go through. Now, in terms of kind of finessing this, there are tons of templates out there online that you can download and use on things like Google Docs, or you can use in Microsoft Word or whatever word processing or tool that you're using. So give those a little Google, have a find, and find a set that works for you. I've kind of developed mine over the years, and they're pretty much at a point that I'm happy with them to use on a regular basis. And the other thing that you can do is look at various different apps to help you plan and manage projects. So there's things like Monday, which is a project management app, or there's Asana, that's another really good one. There's plenty out there that will just help you kind of tick off those boxes as you're going through your production, so making sure you've got your shot list created and everything like that. So if you're managing a few different projects at once, you can kind of go through and you can pick up all the ins and outs of just making sure I've done this for this project and this for this project, and then you can move on to the next stage. So that's the ins and outs of kind of my planning and pre-production, especially kind of when it came to this project here. So I'm just going to breeze through this next bit, which is a little bit about the behind the scenes kind of stuff that I do. So I do try and shoot some behind the scenes as and when I can. It's not always possible, but it's really nice to kind of document the stuff that you're doing. So I set up a little time lapse here on that shoot that I did with one of my friends for his business, and just kind of setting things up. Now, here I was contending with daylight as my kind of background source. Obviously, I wanted to shoot this outdoors. There's a nice little kind of covered area that we were sat in to do the interview. So on the left hand side I put up a flag, and that just really helped kind of cut the sun out from kind of overexposing his right hand side. I had to use two of my lights just to kind of bank in a bit of light at him as well. Unfortunately, just kind of making use of the equipment and softboxes that I had available. I've got my one LED panel light as my fill, and then I've got a little spotlight in the back as well. So a few little lights going on there, getting them as close to him as possible, and then I've just got my boom mic that just goes in over the top just to pick up audio. So that worked really nicely. Nice little time lapse kind of documents how I set that up. Had it been indoors, I'd have probably done a very, very different setup from that, because I'd had a bit more control over the light. So that's kind of behind the scenes on that one. The other good thing about behind the scenes stuff is you can kind of show friends and family like what you've been up to and stuff, the type of work that you're doing and the effort that goes into it. I don't think people appreciate how much effort goes into setting up an interview or a shoot. So that is always a good reason that I like to kind of document stuff, and also just showing where you started. So what your initial setup was at the start of your journey, and then kind of 2 or 3 years down the line, kind of showing where you've got in terms of the equipment you're using, the type of lighting that you're setting up, all that kind of stuff just kind of shows you your own little journey, and it's a nice little kind of keepsake of your journey from point A to where you are now. So yeah, that's my kind of behind the scenes stuff. Kind of moving on from that is just looking at the kind of gear and technical requirements. Now, if you are just getting into filmmaking, if you've got a DSLR or mirrorless camera, chances are it'll do video of some sort. So you already have the basics there. Even if you're just using like a smartphone, you can start creating some visual moving content. But something with a relatively decent output, so frame rate changes are always preferable. My first camera that I was shooting video with was a 5D Mark II, and that really just shot in 25 frames. You could shoot in 50, I believe. Maybe you couldn't. I can't remember. It was about 10 years ago. But yeah, that was my first little camera. I had that. I'd shoot some of the tours that I'd go on with bands that I was in, rehearsals, gigs, and recording sessions. I'd kind of shoot those with with my 5D, and that's kind of the start of it all. So I've gone through a couple of different cameras since then, so 5D to 6D, and then 6D to my A7 Mark III, which is what I'm shooting on here. And I've shot on my A7 Mark III for since it came out, really. Mostly bought that as a stills camera, and then just got really into the video side of things. It shoots 4K really nicely. It shoots various different frame rates as well. But since then, so I kind of shoot my lighter stuff on this, so that's why I'm using that, just because the file format isn't huge. So my main camera, the camera that I shot this project with, was my pocket cinema camera. Not very pocketable anymore, but or I don't think it was even to begin with. But yeah, this is my pocket cinema camera. This is a 6K version, so it's got the Canon EF mount on it. I've got an 18-35 matte box for filters, a little side handle which holds SSDs and additional batteries, and then a little follow focus thing on the side just to make life a little easier when focusing. So yeah, that's my rig. In terms of lenses, I've got the 18-35 and I've also got the 50-100, both by Sigma, both are in that Art series range of lenses. They're very, very versatile lenses and relatively affordable in terms of what you get out of them. So for me, for now, those do absolutely brilliantly on pretty much any shoot that I've had to do. The 6K produces a really nice image, but I have these are 500 gig SSDs. I have 3 of these, and on my last shoot I filled up a full 500 gig and moved on to another one. So, and that's just one project. So that's why I don't use that camera for absolutely everything. So if it's a lighter project, something like this, especially if it's got the length of video that this would be, I just shoot something that has a kind of more compressed codec. I don't need to push and pull the image as much for this as I would do for a project like this that has a lot of dark areas, a lot of light areas. So I'd grade this much kind of greater detail than what I would do something like a webcast or web event. So yeah, that's kind of cameras. So as I said, no matter what camera you've got, chances are that it will be at least a good starting point to be able to capture video from 1080 to 4K. If it's within the last 5 years, you'll have the kind of variable frame rates that you can access in at least 1080 and above. So yeah, that's the kind of basics of it. So you can go out today and start filming stuff. You can be creating content already. You can kind of go out there. The only thing that will limit you, obviously, is kind of audio side of things. So when it comes to audio, definitely worth getting like a little top mic. I have the Rode Video Mic Go. Now it's like the cheap version of what they do, but I've compared it to I used to have the Video Mic Pro until the supports broke on it. That's the old Pro. I bought this. Sound quality is better than that, so I really like that. It's a nice little mic to kind of pick up just ambient sounds, and it is quite good. If you're pointing it at someone, it will pick up their voice really nicely. I also have a Rode filmmaker kit, which is their lav kit, and that I have the Invisalav, so you can just like stick it within their shirt, so the lav will kind of feed up. So instead of it sitting visibly on their hoodie or shirt or whatever you're pinning it to, it just sits underneath. I use that a lot with some of the work that I've done for Wex over the years, including hiding it in Chris's hat for one of the shoots we did in Slovenia a few years ago. So that's kind of audio side of things. Most of my stuff, including this, I'll use a boom mic like I showed in the time lapse. I prefer the boom because it means that they can kind of move about. You're not going to get really any rustling. The audio quality tends to be a lot better in like a slightly larger microphone that you get from the boom, rather than like a little lav mic. Worst comes worst, double up audio, just in case one fails and one crackles or something happens. I've got like a little Tascam audio recorder that has 2 XLRs in the bottom, so I can record 2 channels of audio at once, just to make sure that I'm definitely getting the audio needed. And after all, most of these things you'll have kind of one take to get those questions in, so just make sure that is you're getting the best audio without kind of any interruptions, and especially if you're working on your own. I've been working on my own a lot with the kind of lockdown with these little side projects that I've been doing. So just being able to plug in my mics and kind of just do an initial audio test and just let them get on with it, that makes a big difference. It allows me to kind of sit down and actually have that more intimate, like one-to-one with the person that I'm interviewing. And then finally, it's just kind of getting onto lighting. Now, over the years, I've kind of built a little lighting rig that I've got. So I've got a couple of COB lights. They're relatively low output, about 100 watts, that kind of equivalent output. So I've got that. I've got a couple of the Nanlite tube lights. So I've got one which is lighting me up here. I also have this little one which is a new one. These are little RGB lights. So just turn this on. So this is by Nanlite. Nangwang. So this is the Pavo Tube Nan Light. Yeah, it does like RGB, so it's quite a cool little thing. Comes in this little softbox, and yeah, really cool little light. Quite like the RGB stuff at the moment. I've used these quite a bit on different shoots for just bringing in different effects. So I've got this one, and I said I've got my kind of 2-foot one, which is there. Again, that's full RGB, gives a nice little color output, and the CRI, so the color accuracy is quite high on those as well. And my final one is just, I've got a panel light here, and that's the same panel light that I used for the shoot with my friend that was kind of featured in that time lapse. So it's got a little softbox on it. It's got a very thin profile, so you can kind of roll it up and pop it in your bag, and it's quite safe. It's quite a good size, but also you can do things like tape it to the ceilings, of cars. It's battery powered as well, so you can just run a little V-mount battery or V-lock battery on it, and they're really good just for being able to put in quite restrictive spaces. You know, they're not very thick, so they're not going to kind of protrude into the shot if you don't have much kind of headroom. So yeah, they're really good. Fully controllable. This is a bi-color one, so it does all the kind of color temperatures from, you know, very warm all the way up to very cool. Yeah, and it's again a good CRI, so good color accuracy. So that's kind of lighting. So how I've kind of picked the lighting that I wanted is starting off with something that is good for kind of introduce. That's the COB kind of style, Cobb style lighting. So a couple of those has set me out really well. Then it's just identifying through doing shoots what it is that would take me to like the next step. So the little RGB lights just help me bring in a bit of color for like hair lights, for example, or to light a background in a different color. Again, they're quite little. They are battery powered, so this runs without any cables. This will fit in my camera bag as well, so I just kind of chuck it in my camera bag. It's also magnetic, so these little ones, so you can kind of stick it onto most metal sources. So they're really good, really handy little lights to have, and the fact that the output's super bright. I've got this little like egg crate softbox thing happening as well. Just helps you kind of focus that light a bit more, have a bit more control over the spill. So yeah, just kind of picking out those lights that help you do a specific job and help you kind of move to the next level of your lighting. And then the flat panel lights, just because I needed to get it into a very slim space, so I could kind of tape it to a roof quite easily. So yeah, that's kind of the majority of my kit. As well as kit, it's kind of storing it and transporting it is really important as well. So just kind of go through a few of the little bits that I've got for the internet of storage. So yeah, when it comes to storage, I have all sorts of different bags and cases and things just to make my life easier for going on to shoots and taking stuff like to this shoot here. Everything from kind of little pouches and cases, so I keep my batteries for my camera in this. This is just a little low pro bag that came with my Pro Tactic backpack. I have batteries in things like this, so this is a little think tank bag, so these hold little Sony NPF batteries, or they'll hold Canon LP6 batteries. I also have little timber pouches as well that hold my cables or various other bits and bobs, small batteries and things. And then I have other little pouches and cases for things like additional drives or memory cards and things like that. So it's just making sure that everything has its own little place, no matter how small it is, because it can quite soon just get itself lost in your bags, like in a corner somewhere, and you're scrabbling around trying to find where it is. Also, I use those low pro gear wrap little bags as well, just for kind of holding cables for specific things. So I've got one for my time-lapse stuff, I've got one for my video stuff, and it has like my audio cables in as well. So they're really useful. That's kind of my main little pouch things that I use. On top of that, so my next bag up from that would be my Timber Cinelux backpack. Now, I absolutely love this bag because it fits my completely rigged up Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Cam with the matte box on, with the follow focus on, with the side handle. I just have to take the top handle off because it's not quite tall enough, but everything goes in one go. Don't need to de-rig my whole kit just to kind of move around from one place to another. It's really well protected. The weight is supported really nicely. It's got two very big pockets on the side, and that fits in all of my batteries, cleaning stuff, everything that I kind of need for a day's shoot just with the camera if I'm just kind of run and gun. And it also fits in my spare lens and my little Atomos monitor that I have as well. So super cool little bag. You can get them in different sizes. I have the one which is the right size for kind of what their class is like carry-on size. Not that I've been able to carry it on anywhere in the last kind of 8 months or so, but we'll see what happens in the new year. On top of that, with bags and things, my other kind of big bag that I've got is my Think Tank Production Manager, which is the big one that I've got. Now this holds in like all of my audio stuff for sets, all of my lighting, any kind of additional bits that I need for a shoot like that. So it's quite a big bag, holds in a ton of stuff, has like loads of grab handles everywhere, so you can get your kind of friends and loved ones to kind of help you lift it around everywhere. It's got some super good wheels on it, so you can kind of roll it around and just know that it's it's shock absorbing wheels, so you can go over bumps and things and your kit kind of stays pretty safe in there. And it's also got some like straps on the side where you can just attach light stands to. If I'm taking kind of bigger C stands, then I have my Think Tank Stand Manager, which has some like compression straps in that just holds. I've got like 3 C stands in there, one quite large Manfrotto stand, a couple of booms in there, all sorts. It's a really heavy case and it's kind of a bit of a horror to kind of lug around, but it just means I can kind of put everything in one bag. And again, big chunky grab handles on the top and bottom and the sides, good wheels so you can wheel it around. So again, like a little bit of a lifesaver. And then my final bag is just like my little rigging bag. So I kind of keep this separately because I like to take this on like other shoots as well. So it has like C clamps or C clamps in, or super clamps. So the Manfrotto super clamps, got a few of those. Various spigots, various friction arms, all sorts, just so I can make sure that if I need to kind of attach a light to something, something obscure, I can do that quite easily with no kind of hassle. So I've got that, and then just having a little bungee like this with the Think Tank red whips as well. So these are super handy little bits. They kind of grip hold of cables really nicely, so you can kind of grip cables to stands or to other places and just kind of tie them on tight, and they kind of hold in there so they don't easily kind of thread through. That, and then just like my little small rig multi-tool, which is all camera based, so it's got all camera based tools, like a little flathead for quick release plates, got a screwdriver, hex key, a few other little Allen key sizes on there that are all kind of common for camera equipment. Yeah, so that's pretty much how I kind of rig myself up with different pieces of kit. So next we're going to just have a quick look through like different work styles that I go through. As I've mentioned before, I've got this one that I'm working on at the moment, and a slightly more kind of editorial sort of piece that I've worked on for my friend's new business. So we're going to take a quick look at those next. So in terms of work styles and techniques, I have this, which is my docu sort of style. This is the piece that I'm shooting with Glenn. It's like a docu kind of style, so it's a nice sit down little interview with him, plus some B-roll footage. And my B-roll footage is, the majority of it is handheld. Being handheld, it does mean that I can kind of move around a lot quicker. I can have that kind of docu feel to it as well. My biggest kind of tip for if you are going to do handheld stuff is grab yourself like a little cage for the camera and a top handle. It makes the world of difference for kind of getting those shots, and just kind of gives you another point to hold and kind of support the camera underneath and hold the camera on top as well. Just kind of get really nice shots that aren't too shaky but have that kind of shaky movement, and without having to kind of use like slower shutter speeds or kind of faster frame rates rather to as like a crutch. Like using 50 or 100 frames is fine, but if you're doing a whole documentary where all your B-roll is slow motion, it kind of loses the point of using slow motion. So only use slow motion parts that benefit that kind of feel to it, that kind of slowed down pace. The rest just handhold it. So if it's too shaky, then it's not a great experience for the viewer. So yeah, little top handle, and weight is a really good thing. So I know this camera does look heavy, and it is. I think it's 5 kilos ish. So it's a good weight to it. But just having that weight just means you can support it a lot kind of steadier. You can kind of lean into it a little bit more. So yeah, having a bit of weight onto a camera is definitely not a bad thing for the motion, but it might end up being a little bit of a bad thing for your back after a full day of filming. So with the docu, as I said, I mostly do that handheld. I've also used a slider within this piece as well, just for a nice smooth bit of movement that kind of needed that flow into the first scene. When it comes to add stuff, depending on what it is, you might want to kind of have more considered movements. So things like gimbals are really good to kind of pick up. There's some really great ones out there. Now, recently, I was on a shoot using the Xeon Crane 3S Pro. I think it can hold like 6.5 kilos. We had an EVA rigged up on that. We were kind of running around all day filming with that. Really great piece of kit. Something I'd like, but I just don't know if I want to put 5 kilos on something that I hold like this for the whole day. So, sliders are obviously another really good way of having that kind of controlled, smooth, consistent movement as well. So you just have to think about like the types of movement you want. Now with the ad that I've done, again, the interview was static, so kind of locked off on a tripod, as pretty much all of my interview stuff is. But a lot of the footage, because it's of dogs, it's quite fast-paced, fast-moving. So hand-holding that was kind of the best way of getting everything that I needed. Now, in kind of hindsight, I was static for a lot of it, so I was just kind of following them around me. So something like a little, like a miniature tripod, like a little hi-hat tripod, would have been really good just to kind of keep that plane steady and kind of shift around. But it's not something that I have at the moment, but it's something that is on my consideration list to get in the future. And just put my kind of existing tripod head on, something that has a very low profile that I can just get down and pick up shots like that. So, as I said before, like just moving on with your equipment, just figuring out from a shoot what it is that you're kind of missing, or what would make your life a bit easier on a next shoot, or something a shoot that's similar to this. And then just kind of putting it in a little list, and then if that thing pops up 2 or 3 times, then it's kind of time to look at making the investment. If it's just like a one-time thing that's just like, yeah, that'd be nice to have, but then it never pops up again, it just means that you'd have wasted your money purchasing that. My latest one is actually on this piece of kit, so it's a lens support. So I don't necessarily need the lens support for this camera. For this lens, it's 18-35, so it's quite light. So this is my new little lens support. It's like a little quick release one. It has wheels on it as well, so you can kind of put it anywhere. You can put it on the focus mechanism, you can put it on the zoom ring as well. It doesn't really make a difference where you put it, it just still allows that kind of free movement. But because it's open at the bottom for where it sits on the rails, that means I can take it and put it from one position on my rail system that might be behind my follow focus. If I'm using a slightly longer lens where the focus ring is further back, I'm going to put this at the front to support the front of it, so I can quite easily take that off. Before I had another one by a different company, and I was forever having to just take my matte box off, follow focus off, just to get the lens support out and into the right position. So that's wasted time, completely wasted time. And after my shoot that I had, little shoot that I had recently, it's like, okay, I need to just buy this and get it done. So I did. Not the cheapest thing for what it does, but it makes my life a lot easier. So just a good example of, if you have that annoyance for a few shoots, it's definitely the right time to kind of make that purchase and add that piece of kit to your kit list. So that's kind of different techniques. Now, in terms of things like editing and grading, I have done quite a big series of videos using Adobe Premiere. That's on the Wex YouTube channel, so you can go and check those out. So do take a look at those. Hopefully they'll give you a bit more insight into some of the things that I do in terms of the grading and editing. But at the moment I'm working on this within Premiere, and then when it comes to grade, I won't be using Lumetri, which is part of Premiere. I'll actually be round tripping this through to DaVinci Resolve, which is Blackmagic software, just because it handles the kind of raw footage that Blackmagic produces a lot nicer. So that's going to be my round trip. So just to finish up, we'll be going through just some of the tips and tricks for filmmaking. Now, I've gone through quite a few as we've gone through this event today, but in terms of things like small production shoots and things, really at the moment you should be trying to shoot as much as you can by yourself, just eliminating the need to kind of rely on other people to help you out with your film. So you can then concentrate on kind of doing it in a safer environment. There's not too many people around. Last thing you want to do is get to somewhere and someone's got a heavy cough, or you pick up something, even if it's just a cold. You just don't want to pick up anything from people at the moment. So for my shoot, my friend for the dog shoot, it's just myself and him. This one, which was before lockdown, was 3 of us. So just kind of keeping the crew to a minimum until you can kind of get to a position where things are a bit safer out there and you can kind of start bringing more people into your shoots. Also allows you, if you're shooting things like this that are, or if you're shooting different pieces of content that are a little bit more kind of intimate in their subject, having a bank of crew with you can kind of take away a bit of that intimacy and a bit of that rapport that you get with the person that you're talking to. So just having you there by yourself, just kind of interviewing them, as long as you're confident and that you've set everything up on your kind of camera and you're kind of ready to go with like the audio and everything, and it all looks good, kind of sit there and just have that kind of one-to-one chat. Having an external monitor is really handy as well. I've got my little Atomos, which is just on a little light stand just here, so I'm just monitoring to make sure it all still looks good and everything. So I just have this here. So yeah, that's definitely something worth kind of investing in. The Shinobis are super cheap as well for what they do. Really, really nice little bits of kit. They have focus peaking, they have false colors, everything in it that you need, and so they're really cheap. So worth picking up something like that. That way you kind of have it in front of you, have your camera to one side when you're doing the interview, kind of still just glance down and keep an eye on that whilst keeping that kind of intimacy in the kind of interview that you're giving. With run and gun, as I said and mentioned, grab a cage, chuck a little handle on it, makes the world of difference to your shooting, and just makes it just a bit more kind of easy to be handled and to get kind of the shots, get lower shots and things. So yeah, that's kind of my main tips and tricks. Other than that, it's just going out there and capturing stuff to get yourself comfortable with the kit that you're using. So my Blackmagic cinema camera, I only got that this year. So the first thing I went and did during the lockdown, when we were allowed to kind of go out for walks, is just take my camera out and walks with me, just as I'm walking around, just filming things, just getting to know the set out, where the buttons are on my camera. There's some like short keys on the top or kind of quick keys. So using them, kind of what would be kind of more advantageous for me to have those keys set to. So yeah, so they're my kind of main kind of setups and things. So it's just getting really, really familiar with your kit, just making sure that when you go out there and you're ready to film, you can go out there and you can film, and you don't need to be scrolling through menu system after menu system to try and find how to change it from 25 frames to 50 frames, for example. And then kind of building on from that is then just understanding things like white balance, just making sure that you can roughly judge what the white balance is, so at least you can get it as close. If not, then picking yourself up a grey card. Grey card has got me out of tons of sticky situations with mixed lighting and stuff. So again, Lasterlight do them. You can pick them up from Wex, and they're quite cheap as well. And they do really small ones that you can kind of just fit into like a little fold up. I've got mine, yeah. So this is my little grey card. So tiny. Some cameras need to fill the frame with the grey card. Others don't. They can just pick a point, and then they'll take the white balance of that. So yeah, that's a really helpful little piece of kit. But anyway, I hope you have found this session really useful. Thanks very much for dropping kind of comments in the site as we've gone along. If you do have any further comments that you want to add, some extra questions that you kind of just thought of, then do forward them onto the WEX events team and they'll get them onto me and I'll get back to you as quickly as I possibly can. Thanks for watching.